G'day, my name's James Baldwin and welcome to Oz F1. It's really great to have your company for this, our final recap episode for 2020 for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Just such a shame that it was so boring, but never fear, there was plenty to talk about with everything going on before the race itself, and as we look to the 2021 season. So stick with us as we talk about that and more on this episode of Oz F1. And a big g'day to the boys who are doing Oz F1 with me for the final recap episode of the year. Tommy T, Thomas J, Camp, boys. We had a 2020 season.
Yeah, and we finished it off well.
No, we didn't. It was terrible. What a bore fest.
We say this every year. I mean, we've only been doing the podcast for 2 years, but I can assure you for the last 7 years I've been saying Abu Dhabi is the shittest racetrack on the calendar. Why? We didn't even get to go to Brazil this year, which is the spiritual end of the season, and everyone knows that.
Yeah,
it is.
This race is, what's the point? I mean, I understand it's about money, and F1 clearly after some of the things. Clearly. After this week, there's not races won, they race for money. the hypocrisy is real, but just be honest about the hypocrisy. But this race, I mean, we could rag on them for a couple of hours here, but this race is a stinker. I actually fell asleep during the live broadcast and missed the end of it. So I decided to rewatch it again this morning, and I fell asleep while watching the replay. It was that boring. So, look, I've caught up now. It's taken me three tries to watch the thing, but, geez, what a nightmare of a Grand Prix.
It says a lot when the boys in the commentary box are talking about literally anything else other than the race in the last 10 laps, and they weren't trying to find anything. Crofty had just given up completely. Martin Brundle had to drag him back to talking about the race. He was like, okay, let's talk about people who are close to each other.
Anything.
Oh, God. And which that was it, really. In the last couple of laps, he obviously got Stroll, but what a absolute bore fest. To be honest, and I said this just before we started recording, I don't normally watch all of the lead up to a Formula One weekend, but considering it was a midnight race for those on the east coast of the country, it was just easy to stay up and watch the whole thing. The pre-race content was amazing. We'll talk a little bit later about Tommy T's broadcast review in which he watched every single minute of live Formula One action, believe us. But before we get into that, boys, a lot happened in this week, from the good Bahrain track to the worst track on the calendar. I want to bring everyone's attention to Nikita Mazepin and how much of a dud he hasn't even started Formula One yet, and he's the Formula One big dud for 2020 and 2021. Campy, I want to take your thoughts on this first. You just mentioned before that we race for money, not we race as one. This has to be the most ridiculous display of a lack of decision by Haas and Formula One as a whole this year.
Yeah, look, I don't love how politically correct we are in society, and I could talk about that for hours, but what Mazepin did was utterly stupid. The problem is the repercussions of his actions, and whether he should have them or not. Well, in today's day and age, we're on the internet. You know, there's just some things you don't say and you don't put on the internet. I am well aware of those things here on that, and I teeter on that line there. You know, I dance with it somewhat at times.
You're on the other side looking back.
No, but like that's all right because it's all tongue in cheek and banter. But what he did was inexcusable, and whether it was funny and, you know, all parties involved were okay with it, it's not a good look. It's against the point. Now, my issue is with how Haas and F1 responded to it. As I said, this year we've had the first year where political opinions have taken centre stage in F1, and they've taken the tack to stand by it. Now, the problem is when you start acting with some moral superiority and telling the rest of the world about how they should do things, you then don't have a choice about what is right and what is wrong. And this We Races One stuff, clearly 17 races in, end of the year, it took, 12 races to blow over, and their whole house is crumbling now. You know, it's not We Races One, we race for money, clearly. I mean, we spoke about a couple of weeks ago them going to Saudi Arabia next year, and the people on the internet gave them a bit of shit for that, and now we're dealing with a whole other situation, which has got a driver on the grid with the superstars of the sport and the ones that should get all the attention and all the criticism and accolades when deserved, and they've wiped this one, and they're just hoping that people don't talk about it. So,
yeah, it's pretty
hypocritical, and it's bullshit. I hate to see it as a fan.
Yeah, there you go. I hate this whole thing.
Man.
This I'm a big on leadership for small businesses that I run and a few other bits and pieces. Yep. And these guys, these 20 drivers, are leaders, like it or not, in the way that they act. People take notice, and quite clearly, just saying, Haas, in a statement, Haas, it does not like this behaviour at all, and it doesn't condone this behaviour. That's not good enough, everyone. You had an opportunity to really make your point, make your We Racers 1 point here, and say, due to this video being released, it's inexcusable. We're dropping him. We're picking up Callum Ilott, or we're picking up Sergio Perez or Nico Hulkenberg. And I was just saying before we started recording, you cannot tell me that Nikita Mazepin is better than Nico Hulkenberg, Sergio Perez, Marcus Ericsson, Pascal Wehrlein, Stoffel Van Dorn, or Danny Kvyat. We're going to get there in a second. All these other drivers who are losing seats for a very average Formula 2 driver with a lot of money. Now, he's average in the grand scheme of things. He obviously can drive a car, because otherwise he wouldn't necessarily be in the category. But when someone like Callum Ilott misses out, you can't then say it's chalk and cheese. As far as I'm concerned, it's not good enough. Yep. And I know there will be some issues from a monetary point of view. We spoke about last week how Haas are probably still recovering from the Williams Story event with Rich Energy, and needing some money, being, second last in the championship's not going to do them any good either. I get that. But you know what? Sergio Perez brings a hell of a lot of money with his sponsorship with Telcel. It could have been Telcel Haas Formula 1 team next year, and people would have been stoked. The paddock would have been happy. Tommy T, your overall thoughts on this absolute dud of a human being?
Well, firstly, with the cost cap, surely you don't need endless money. You need enough money. And I think a lot of these drivers would provide enough money. So unless they're dodging cost caps, I don't know why. But there was another part of this where I heard some other voices in this arena saying they want his points on his super license to be carried over into Formula 1. Currently at this stage, when you change categories, points don't move over. They reset. Yep. He's currently on 13, I'm pretty sure, one off what would be a suspension of drive if he was to come to Formula 1. That's going to be wiped clean. We saw he's a dirty driver in F2. He's been reprimanded for things socially before. This is another incident. This guy is now coming into our sport. Do we really want him to represent Formula 1 as one of the 20 best drivers we've got? I think it's Haas is mucked up bad here.
Yeah.
And I can't understand why Gunther would allow this. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would let this slide. I feel like maybe someone behind the scenes is pulling a lot more strings than he's comfortable with.
Money talks, bullshit walks, Tommy. We got a Russian billionaire funding his son in F1, and that's what it's about. Now, you can take the incident and isolate it and talk to all parties involved and be like, oh, we're just joking, we're making a funny video. Everyone deserves a second chance, I get it. But in this day and age, in the way we operate and the stance that Formula 1 has taken socially this year, not that I think Formula 1 or sport any around the world should be taking some of these stands against stuff. Racism's one. That's hands down. Everyone can stand up for that, and if you're against it, you're an idiot. But the other stuff that we're beginning to see, where it's ideologically based, they can't pick and choose. You can't make a stand on something and then on nothing else because it's money related. People aren't stupid. Sort it out.
Yeah, really not good enough. We will not drop it either, to be honest. It was very, very clear through the entire broadcast this weekend. Not one thing was mentioned officially about it. I think Crofty and Ted might have had a bit of a joke on Friday. But seriously, it's not good enough. These guys are leaders, and this kind of behaviour isn't good enough. He's got a rap sheet. The dude punched Callum Ilott in the face after a race at one point as well. So it's not an isolated
race,
incident.
Did you see him running people off the track?
It's not an isolated incident. The guy clearly has some issues. And look, if he can work through them, that's fine. But he doesn't need to be, in the top 1% of the 1%, as you said last weekend, Campy.
Not when there's deserving as well.
100%.
With cash.
I'm not interested in it. So anyway, look, you're right. he's I think I'm right as well. He's an absolute dud. I don't think you want him anywhere near the sport because he's not going to deliver anything. And it really was a shame because it completely overshadowed Mick Schumacher getting in the car for FP1 and for Haas this weekend. And they did their best to completely move on. In fact, they were lucky almost. The social media guys were lucky at Haas that Mick Schumacher was in so they could just do that. But certainly if you've been on the Twitter sphere or anywhere else, there's a whole bunch of people who aren't happy about it. And if you think that, we're going over the top, well, maybe you need to take a look at the sport as a whole, as Campy's just said, over the last 12 months in the direction that they're all going. Okay, let's talk about some big news that's happening ahead of,
news.
This week. We've said goodbye to a lot of people from so many different teams. I even had to check with you that I'd made sure I got them all listed down here.
So many.
First of all, Romain Grosjean, he's ended up going out as one of the most respected Formula One drivers because of his incident. And I don't want to take anything away from him or from his recovery, but I don't think the Formula One world would have loved him as much leaving if he did not have his crash, which probably sounds a bit harsh to say, but it's really ignited people's love for him and passion and reminding everyone that just how difficult this sport is. So he got a steering wheel, which was really nice, considering they clearly need the money. Now that they've got this Russian money flowing in the door, they're just going to give out $80,000 steering wheels like it's going out of fashion. But it's sad that he couldn't even be at the race this weekend. Very active on social media, though. But Romain, massive effort being in Formula One as long as you were, and a couple of podiums as well. Did some mega drives, and then at the end of your career, you collected a lot of data. So well done for that.
That Lotus era was incredible, wasn't it, Campy?
Look, for both Magnussen and Grosjean, a lot of our content over the last year has been laughing at them for, the consistent mistakes they make on track against each other and crashing into each other and spinning. That car's been a piece of shit for the better part of 5 years. Yeah. The first year when they had it, I think it was 2015 when they got when they had majority of Ferrari parts on it. The team performed well in that mid-pack, and the results that K-Mag were getting and Grosjean were getting were magnificent compared to the cars they're in. Yeah. But they're both drivers we never really got to see the best of them because, you look at Romain, his legacy in that Lotus, he drove really well. He really well consistently on the podium when that car was right. And K-Mag too, on debut to get a podium.
Yeah, huge.
To never return ever again, to never have a car that was, should have been in the points at any given time. It's a real shame for these guys, but unfortunately, it's just our sport and where it is at times.
I feel like it's just apologies to everyone who's just checking their phone through the podcast.
Yeah. Did that come up, did it?
That Campy getting a phone call. Sorry, Campy, do go on.
Popular guy.
I believe that was my accountant ringing me, actually, which is probably not a bad thing.
What have you done now?
I'm just going to...
You're absolutely right, though, Campy. I think, Romain, he did an epic job. And both K-Mag, as you said, getting inevitably second with the penalties in his first race in Australia. Not too dissimilar to Perez in terms of his time at McLaren as well for Kevin Magnussen. I kind of get the feeling, and even Crofty said this, that we didn't really get the opportunity to see the very best of Kevin Magnussen in a Formula One car, but this is how it goes. As we've said, someone like Sergio Perez winning last weekend is leaving the sport completely. Now, really. So he's not coming back next year as far as we know. So it is sad, but as I said before, it's good. Haas seems to be, from that side, leaving on a high. And again, shame about Nikita just completely, muddying the waters for all that. Tommy T, your thoughts on K-Mag and Grosjean saying goodbye to the sport?
Well, I was a big fan of Haas when we first started this podcast. I was the biggest fan. I was like, yep, they're going to be the next team. They're going to capture that American market. They're doing everything right. They were saying all the right things. They had the cool car designs. They were ticking all of the boxes, and it's just gone nowhere. So I don't know how much we can actually put on these drivers, to be honest, because I think in the right car, these guys would perform as well as a Kvyat or a Gasly or... Do you know what I mean? I don't think these...
George Russell.
Yeah. I
don't think top car, they'd probably win.
Yeah. Yeah. I genuinely think these two are great drivers. I think Grosjean was getting to the twilight of his career and this kind of made sense. But K-Mag's going to go into another category and he's going to do really well. He's going to do things like Stoffel. He's going to change categories. He's going to do really well. So I don't think it's the end for them, but it is disappointing that this is kind of the way that they went out.
Yeah,
When
I agree.
Haas had so much potential. And
Yeah.
I hope that the future's bright, but it kind of has got bad in these last 2 years that we've been following.
Campy, you've said it in the last couple of episodes as well, or a couple of episodes ago, I should say, in terms of the Haas as a car. It's a bit of a dog to drive. They can't figure out temperatures in the resuspension setup, and from FP1 to Q1, the car can be completely different. FP3 to Q1, I should say, the car can be completely different depending on temperatures and tracks and everything else. And if it would be interesting to put our boy Danny Rick or even Lewis in a Haas for a weekend to see how they would do. It seems like a very difficult car to drive. But we're saying goodbye to them from the sport. We know for sure that they're not, both of them not coming back. Danny Kvyat, though, he told everyone that he wasn't coming back. No official announcement yet of Yuki Tsunoda going to AlphaTauri. So Danny's like, it's all right, guys, I got this. And speaking to Spanish media after the race, he dropped those bombshells, basically saying that he wasn't coming back for 2021, that Helmut Marko wants Yuki Tsunoda, and he's probably going to see if he can come back in 2022. It's unlikely for him to return a second time, Campy, we think, but he performed pretty well this weekend, but we all generally forgetting about him now, aren't we?
Look, he hasn't driven as well as Gasly at times this year, but Gasly's results have been lucky, but he's got a win and a podium. So, look, there's a few things that need to happen in what's so funny, boys?
Guys, it's just you and technology and your phone noises just
Your
deafening
damn
Tommy and
computer,
I.
your iPad.
Sorry, I'll turn
Just
it off.
tell your accountant that you're busy talking about the best sport in the world.
We're an international podcast, mate. Can you pipe down?
Yes.
Sorry, where was I? We were talking about Kvyat, right?
Yeah.
Your boy.
He hasn't. This year he hasn't performed as well as Gasly, but of those three drivers, he's the one that's performed the best in that Red Bull top team. Look at his career there. Yes, he got ousted for Max, but consistently was better. He even beat Daniel Ricciardo over a whole year. Not that that should have happened, and that was because Danny Rick's car had gremlins, and Danny Rick pantsed him off on track, but the results did not suggest. So in history, when you look at it, didn't come across that way. He's the one that's performed better in the top team than anything else, which is a shame for him, but he's had a chance, and you've got to take your chances when you're in F1. He's had 2 chances at Red Bull, 3 now. So, look, I think he'll go on to another category, much like the other one. Is a very competent driver, and he'll have a long career, whatever it be.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, well, let's talk about Checo Perez. Tommy T, he had a miserable weekend, didn't he? A lot of emotions going around that Racing Point garage. They still have made the wrong decision in terms of getting rid of him and keeping Lance Stroll. Stroll is also a dud, and this weekend proves it again that he just needs to disappear from the sport, and that's not fair. But anyway, Checo suffering from what was a gearbox, it looked like, issue, and you could feel his emotion afterwards. In fact, I think his lead mechanic yeeted his helmet so hard on the ground that the visor snapped off of it. It's sort of reminiscent of the Ferrari mechanic head-butting a wall when Felipe Massa was robbed of the championship. Anyway, that's just a nice Formula One memory for me. But so sad for Checo, isn't it, Tommy T, that we're not going to see him around again.
Not how he wanted to go out, I'm sure, as well. After the highs of last week to this, something completely out of his control, gearbox, transmission related, is what we've been told, and so early in the race as well. And he screwed the race for everyone else. But beside that, we're talking about Perez right now. I'm pretty confident we'll see him back. I don't think it will be next year. All points are leading now that he's going to have a year off, and he's going to be back when the wow.
Good.
This
This is going well, isn't it?
I know.
I've been up for a long time.
Well,
when the regulations change. Wow.
There you go. And to be honest, though, and Martin Brundle made a very good point with this, this is the kind of sport that if you take a year out, you get forgotten about very quickly. Nico Hulkenberg, we were talking about very early on in the season that he deserves a seat. And to be honest, if he was caught up in that Mercedes to replace Lewis instead of George, we might have been having a stronger argument, and he might have won the race, and that would have been very, very much a fairy tale ending for him in Formula One. But I don't want Checo to take a year out. However, we think that this weekend for Alex Albon has maybe done enough for Christian Horner to stand up and say, well, he's performed where we need to. He's gotten better, and this is where he's at now. His standard is where we expected it to be.
They're looking for any excuse.
Any excuse. You said this last weekend as well, didn't you, Tommy T? This was really the race for him to keep his seat. To be fair to him, he didn't do a bad job. The problem is he should have been doing this all season long.
This is the minimum we require of Albon. Do you reckon, Campy? This is the minimum expectation.
Still so far away from Max.
The second best car, fourth is the minimum.
For me, if that's where his car was every weekend, I would still have question marks over him because the car should be getting results here and there. It was good to see that he was challenging or hanging with Lewis Hamilton, but that's the first time we've seen that in a year and a half, a whole year and a half. I mean, with the exception of the two crashes they had where he probably should have got up. But I mean, no, but those things happen because of other things on track as well.
No, totally. Yeah.
Which were at to Lewis Hamilton's hindrance. You know, he should have been in those positions anyway, but this is motorsport. I'd be shocked if Red Bull keep him. But Red Bull are pig-headed and they make their own decisions. On the flip side, the only thing that would, if I'm Red Bull, the only way that I can justify keeping him to myself is that they don't really care about who the number 2 driver is. They are so focused on Max Verstappen and they know what they're going to get. They don't particularly care about the Constructors' Championship. For them, it's more about the drivers. So if they can get a driver in that toes the party line, that they don't really have to pay too much, I mean, they'll give him a salary, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be £5 million plus. I'm speculating, I wouldn't know. But that's cheap for them. They can use him as a benchmark against their junior drivers. And I mean, it makes sense to not care about him. You got however many 800 people in the factory working solely for Max Verstappen. That's the only way I can justify it to myself.
Yeah. And even then, you're just really pushing it, aren't we?
And I'm still, but as I said, if that's where he performed every race he'd been in, I'd still be asking questions.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, it'll be an interesting week. I think we'll find out in the next 7 days. Obviously, the Formula One teams will be staying, or most of them will be staying for the young driver tests, where young and upcoming people like Fernando Alonso will be driving not only their two-time world championship winning car. So we're also saying goodbye internally to some teams, or some people, I should say, transferring teams. Carlos Sainz said goodbye to McLaren. There seems to be a lot of love from McLaren for Carlos Sainz. If you think about his trajectory as well, he's kind of pushed to the side when he went to Renault back in 2018 when he did that stint there, but he still was sort of taking those steps forward and wanting to be better and better and better. He's had a great year at McLaren towards the end. Last year, we all agreed that he was our most improved driver or the best of the rest, I should say, for 2019. Yeah, I think also just the relationship that he and Lando have, they seem to be so different to almost every single other driver pairing, and I think it'll be different again with Danny Rick. But Tommy T, Sainz must be kind of a little bit happier that Ferrari are closer towards the front, not always, and of course he passed a couple of them this weekend, but must be sad for him leaving a car that's getting Mercedes power next year.
For sure, and I genuinely don't know what he's going into. I think Leclerc's going to actually give it to him. I don't think he's going to walk into that job and actually be the top driver. I think Leclerc is going to give him a real run and he's going to be back at the bottom of the pile again. He's had this kind of superiority over Lando, definitely of age, but also results. So he's going to walk into that with a young gun in Leclerc, actually giving it to him. I don't know. What do you reckon, Campy? You're not a massive Leclerc guy.
Oh, look, it'll be tough for a guy. I mean, we learnt about Ferrari's intentions with Charles Leclerc and where they gave him a 5-year contract, which Ferrari don't just do to drivers that haven't won world championships before. So their faith and their trust is in Leclerc, much like Red Bull is with Max Verstappen. It's going to be hard for anybody. We've seen how hard it is for Sebastian Vettel this year, a 4-time world champion. It's going to be hard for Sainz to get in there next year and have the team work and operate around him and get the car to go in a direction that he wants, because Leclerc's had 2 years there where he's been pushing them and he's their number one driving force. In F1, I mean, these drivers are good. They adapt. I think Sainz will perform. I think it'll be quite the arm wrestle. But I think 7, 8, 9, 10 races in, we'll have a better picture of where Ferrari see their future and if it's genuinely a 50-50 type relationship or it's all their eggs in one basket with either driver.
Yeah, I think what he's leaving in McLaren, though, is a very kind of open and honest communication between both drivers. There's no kind of favourites really that we can see. Whereas you're going into Ferrari, which is one of the most, I don't know, we've talked about it, sabotagey favoritism kind of arenas there is in Formula One. So
Mattia Bonotto, Mr. Where's Wally himself.
He's been missing. He's been Where's Wally?
He has.
Haven't seen him.
He was sick this weekend. I think there's some things going
Non-COVID
on.
related.
There is some things going on at Ferrari. I know their CEO stepped down, or their CEO was somebody that stepped down, and then the chief operations officer has now taken up that role as well. There's some things going on in the background at Ferrari, which they're sorting out. We're starting to see it played out in media, but I think we'll hear some stories about what's actually going on within that organisation as a whole, not just the F1 team, but the production car company as well. So, but when it goes wrong at Ferrari, it goes wrong because, they think that the race team should be everything else and all the flavour and the lifestyle and everything else that comes with
The
being
passion.
a Ferrari. But it's not that unless you get on-track things right. And I think they're going to try and sort that out off track.
Yeah, well, one Seb Vettel will be very happy to be saying goodbye to them and going to Aston Martin next year. And, of course, seeing Sergio Perez on top step of the podium last week, he must have been quietly confident. It's going to be interesting to see him next to Stroll. So Stroll will go from C to D to E grade pretty quickly, I think.
He will pants
him.
Stroll.
Absolutely. But
if he's driving shit or he's driving good, he'll still make him look like a boy.
yeah. But it's exciting for Seb because it's clearly been a very tough year. Although, to be honest, he was still very happy. And you said this at the beginning of the season, Campy, that he's the consummate professional, right? He hasn't said a bad word about Ferrari at all, even with the saying goodbye, singing some Ferrari songs as he was coming down on the cool down lap. He's very much, he understands the tifosi and the passion about Formula One and Ferrari, that, the place that they hold in it. So again, he's a great guy in terms of being able to remain that composed. Any three of us would have lost it by now.
The Sebastian Vettel of yesteryear would not have handled the way he's handled this year.
Yeah.
So it shows some growth and maturity from him, which you'd expect. I mean, you've been in the sport, 13 or 14 years now? Anyway,
Yeah, it's
I think that the token, I think it was a bit token from Ferrari giving him the guard of honour because they're trying to honour him now. Should have honoured him by giving him a good car, putting a good car on track for the last 5 years, and giving him the championship-winning car that he really wanted.
Yeah.
They have shagged him over so badly this year. It's not funny. In the face of everyone, I mean, he's probably going to come out and say something in a book once upon a time about how he got shafted at Ferrari this year. But until then, I think it was token from Ferrari. I just didn't like the optics of it. Didn't look good.
No. That book will be co-written by Felipe Massa, Fernando Alonso,
Well,
Kimi Raikkonen.
There's
The other good thing too is it probably gives Sebastian
Barrichello.
Vettel some good reflection about his relationship with Mark Webber too, and that's done and dusted. They've patched that up, but I think this year's been probably a year like what Mark Webber was experiencing under Sebastian Vettel all those years ago. And as Aussies, we hated it, and we hated it. Sebastian Vettel was there was number one hatred on the fans. So from the fans, especially in Australia, but look. This is motorsport and this is F1. That's how it plays out sometimes.
Plus, here at Oz F1, we're allowed to change our minds at least twice a podcast.
Totally.
The
As long
final,
as we get a laugh.
the final one at least, Danny Rick is going to say goodbye, thank goodness, to Renault and going to Mercedes-powered McLaren. I cannot wait for him to be in that car. McLaren did a nice little goodbye film to Carlos Sainz, no strings attached. If you haven't seen that yet, there's a lot of production that went into that, which seems maybe a little bit over the top. But anyway, that was just a nice touch. The other thing to mention about McLaren and why it's exciting for Danny Ricciardo is that they have a new investor into the McLaren Sport team, which means that they're going to have it's like $326 million investment into the sport, into the team, which is a good thing for 2022. And of course, the way the McLaren are performing now, fantastic. But for 2022, if we're looking down the barrel of a Danny Rick World Championship,
2022 is the year.
I cannot wait. I have a feeling that McLaren are going to take the mantle as the dominant team for a couple of years in there, and Danny Rick's going to be in the prime position. Surely he has to make the decision of going to a good team at one point.
The stars are aligning.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it.
He will be the one to bring McLaren's dominance back to the forefront of the F1 paddock, and it's going to be amazing to watch.
Preach, Campy.
Yeah.
Join us for 2022, guys. Give next year a miss.
Skip next year. Yeah, couldn't agree with you more from what's coming down.
Do you want me to take an altar call in a minute or what? For those of you McLaren deniers out there, come join me.
Nah, I'm very excited. And I think it's going to be very interesting for Lando to be up against a driver like Ricciardo.
Yep.
I think we love Carlos, but genuinely, I don't know if he's on the same level as Ricciardo. I really think Lando's going to be given a run.
He'll
for
look
his money.
like Ocon this year.
Yeah. Well, Lando actually ended up winning the qualifying battle this year. Well,
It was
overall.
19 all over 2 seasons, apparently.
Yeah, that's it. So, really, that's not going to continue. I'm sorry, Ricciardo's going to come swinging.
Do you know what I'm excited?
Ricciardo's strength is not his one lap pace, although it is very good.
It's good, but it's not his strength. So he's going to win on both.
Yeah. He will. It's his race pace and strategy that is just far beyond anyone else on the grid, in my opinion.
The one thing we look at, though, Campy, is what he's done in Renault over the last 2 years to bring a team that it was in a similar position. They came fourth in 2018 and they were looking good. 19 was shocking. He sort of has the ability to quietly build a team around him. He's not like the flashy, the reason for the success is because of me. He just quietly works in the background and is able to bring that together. If you add in someone like Zach Brown as a CEO
Andreas
Seidel to make that all work, they're desperate to have him in, right? So
exciting.
Danny Rick's off-track intelligence is as good as anyone who's ever driven on the grid.
Yeah.
And yes, we see this laughable character out in the media. But that's not what he's like behind closed doors. He's as switched on and as good as anyone that's ever driven in F1 ever. And hopefully he gets in a car that he can win a world championship with. Because up until now, he's never been in one. Yes, he's been in a good Red Bull. It's got him some good results at times.
After they were good.
They were good. But, let's get him in a car that is capable of winning week in, week out and really see what the guy can do. And this was what McLaren excites me.
Yeah.
Saying that, of this midfield battle this year, the 3 teams that won it, you know why McLaren won it? Not because they were the best car out of the 3, but because the 2 drivers were the most consistent.
Yep.
If you look at Racing Point, you had Checo. Checo, 125 points, 3rd in the 4th in the driver standings. Danny Rick, he was 6 points behind Checo, I think 119. But their teammates were both duds and shocking, didn't perform. That's the only sort of, I've said this before on the podcast, I'm a bit worried about Danny Rick going to McLaren, but that's the only one piece of doubt in the back of my mind is that maybe the McLaren's just a good overall car and it'll get the job done if both drivers are driving well.
Yeah, but I mean,
consistent.
He's driven the wheels off that Renault, right, and really brought it up.
Totally.
So, but if you increase the capacity of the car to be a better all-rounder car at all circuits,
and you put a Merc in the back,
and you put Danny Ricciardo in the front, the ability to, even if he's just scoring, he's 3rd, 4th, 5th, next year, just chasing that tail end and being able to, make the most of if a Red Bull crashes out or Mercedes or whatever, Ferrari's not going to be towards the front again. So it's really McLaren's race to be closest to Red Bull as they can. I'm excited for it. It's great. And you know what? He's respected by everyone still around him in that space too. So whilst he does look relaxed and he does play the Australian card, He's absolutely an absolute gun. Really, what a fantastic driver. All right, boys, let's talk about overall thoughts of the race. Okay, that's that bit done. No, what I want to mention about the track itself or the race weekend was Fernando Alonso going back in his championship winning car. Campy, did you get a chance to see the Screamer?
I've actually got a 2005 World Championship Fernando Alonso official hat right here.
I love that.
Got this for a hundo off eBay. Looking, it's going to go on our new set for next year, boys. I've also got a genuine Jaguar flag from the mid 2000 years as well. So that's good. Oh, how good was the sound?
And he was pushing it too. Like there was no he was like all the revs. You have all the revs, Fernando. Off you go.
My first memory of F1 as a kid, I wasn't even at the track. I was at Moomba or something stupid like that, and I was about, I would have been 9 or 10.
Yep.
And the F1s were on, and I was like, far out, where are those cars coming from? Dad's like Albert Park. Anyway, I'm like, how far away is that? And Dad was like, middle of the city. He goes, as the crow flies, maybe 7 or 8 kilometres. I'm going, what is it? They were so loud from that far away that I was getting a headache as a 10-year-old and had to get earphones to protect it.
Wow.
And hearing that,
Yeah, so
imagine being... I never went to F1 when they were that loud on track. My first actual race attended was the first year of the turbo hybrid, and I was like, this sucks. So, yeah, look, I loved it. And to see all the engineers, their races at heart too. You know?
Yeah, it's cool.
They were out there watching it and they were super excited.
Yeah, like everyone from every other team was out there with their phone. My favourite clip was when he went down the main straight and passed Ocon, who didn't have his fingers in his ears, but everyone else had their fingers in their ears, and he was like... just deafened himself.
His dork, isn't he?
It was fantastic to watch. But no, that was probably my favourite part. And he did it for 3 days over the entire weekend. It was the best part of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Got to say it. Okay, so we've mentioned Sergio Perez, absolute disaster for him. He obviously didn't want to finish that way. He had a lovely tribute helmet to his 10 years and all of his race wins and, well, one win, I should say, and podiums. Still, I'm a bit heartbroken for him. I really can't get past thinking that Horner's going to announce that Albon's staying. Otherwise, I'd have a little bit more hope for him for this week, but I'm still sad. We've mentioned that before. Let's talk about Danny Ricciardo and Renault very quickly. The Renault strategy this weekend seems to have actually worked. Either that or Danny just stayed out himself and did it all. But they unusually, Campy, made a right decision, and you were like willing them on to make that decision via Discord too.
Yeah, Discord, it was so funny. It was like 20 messages came through at once. It was like, let's stay out, stay out, stay out, stay out.
They've been trained well.
I expected another safety car or a virtual safety car towards the end of the race, which is what they were hoping for. And if that had have happened, that would have upshot Danny Rick to a possible, it would have solidified his 5th place, but possible, jump on the 4th. And once a restart like that happens, you never know up the front. It could be a crash. He's on for a podium. It's a real shame. I think it's been his best chance for a podium this weekend of the last 3 races. But it's motorsport, didn't happen. So they got it right. They made the right strategy.
His pace was outstanding on those hard tyres for so long.
40 laps.
Incredible.
Renault's got form of that all year. Yeah. They've been really strong on their long run pace on hard tyres. As for Ocon, jeez. On the mediums, 5 laps in, team orders.
Get out the way.
That must crush the kid's confidence. Finally outperforms Danny Rick. And Danny Rick in qualifying is like, that was the worst qualifying of, my whole life. He goes, I just couldn't hook the car up. Yeah. But it was set up for a race, so that's good.
I think Danny was like, I'm going to go for 11th. And then Ocon was slightly faster. He's like, fuck. I want a tyre choice. You ruined it.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about our favourite part of the podcast and the most prepared for segment in Oz F1.
I got notes.
Tommy T.
Ooh, got notes.
Woo.
Take us away.
This is getting axed. I've got a new segment coming for you guys.
He's calling it. We had David Coulthard doing the post-qualifying interviews, and he congratulated Max on his first ever pole.
Saw that.
Congratulations on not knowing any facts, DC.
What are you doing, mate?
In his defence,
Max just looked
that
at his
chin is amazing. He can say what he wants with a chin
I
like
think
that.
it's about 3 chins. It's friggin' sharp.
Yeah, it's epic.
Oh, imposing.
It is. But Max rolled with it like a professional because he is. He could have corrected him. He didn't just roll with it.
But his face was like,
He's like, what, mate? He's like, you think I'd be celebrating a bit more, wouldn't I?
we're in the
Anyway.
same team. We drive the same cars at like events. Shut up, mate.
Can't wait to get rid of these nappies off your face next year. It's going to be
Speaking of,
exciting to see. Here we go.
we had Alonso in the pits with a mask of his own face.
And Danny Rick.
Alonso was driver of the day, I reckon. I reckon he wins.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That'll
He
be
had the
last time
best
that
car
happens.
and he had the best mask. So, Alonso, you are driver of the day. We had a Plan B joke from Crofty about the rapper. Not what I thought Crofty's music taste would be.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I had to double listen to that.
Crofty
He's probably got teenage kids. He's probably, somewhat hip.
is trying to be cool. And then
Crofty.
finally, at the end, we had Max going, you can turn down the engine now if you like.
And then back, negative.
They're like,
That was it.
Negative.
They just don't want to play sometimes.
Funny joke. Shut up, Max.
Yep.
Keep driving. Love Max. Big fan.
Oh,
I reckon it's pretty good, considering I didn't watch a lot of it.
What a surprise.
Outside of it.
what about the flyover, Jim? There was the flyover.
Gotta love me some 787 wing band. I love those wings. Look like a glider, and I love flying gliders too. But not bad. Like just one big old right down the middle. A couple of old school jets and a brand new Etihad. It was just nice not to see any Emirates branding around. Nice new Etihad 787. Fantastic. It's probably a solid 7 out of 10 for that.
Good.
But my favourite part was, again, the pre-recorded national anthem. No, it wasn't. It was terrible. What is with this part of the world
Don't
and pre-recording
do
the national anthems, Campy?
Start of an anthem, that one.
What's the name of it?
Ishi Belady or something.
How do you know that? I love that.
We were messaging
Came up on the screen. I was like, that is an odd name for a song.
It is.
Anyway, it
So
was
I did some
pre-recorded.
quick Wikipedia on it, and it's not my cup of tea. But
Yeah,
But there was some good segments that Sky F1 ran. We
Yes.
had the Lewis and
the Doctor.
the Doctor. That was great. I only
Valentino.
saw part 1, so I'm going to watch part 2 when we finish this up. But looking very much forward to that. The first part was great.
Yeah, epic.
We had some good walk-arounds. We had some good stuff, to be honest. Like some of the Sky pre-race stuff is actually quite good. So
Yeah.
they said to get rid of Crofty and then we'll be better.
I'll admit, watching that segment, I actually liked Lewis Hamilton watching that
I
segment.
know.
Me too.
It was painful to watch, but I was like, maybe he is.
I was
a
like,
good
if the
guy.
Doctor likes him, then I have to like him, don't I?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, he's probably a really good dude,
Oh,
a
mate,
wonderful
yeah.
friend, an absolute legend human being, and
Totally.
then there's us.
No, but we've got no
Dickheads.
understanding of how this guy actually lives his life. I would hate to be that famous.
Yep.
You can't do anything without
The good news
anyone
is, mate,
watching
being on this
screen.
podcast, you're never going to be that famous.
With a
But
head
what
for
did you
radio.
think? What did you? I know you didn't see the segment with Carlos and Lando. That was a solid
No.
effort. So basically, it was Simon Lazenby and Martin Brundle and Paul
Laser.
DeResta with his blonde tips. It was like, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to cut to the boys. And Carlos and Lando were with the the cameraman was walking backwards and. It was funny because they were like clearly had earpieces in for the Sky Sports TV director to say, this is what you got to do. This is where you got to stand. Like, ask this question. And they'd be like, oh, so now we have to ask this question. Like, it was just terrible television, but really good television at the same time. And they put together a little farewell video. It was very cute, but very, very entertaining. Worth watching if you haven't seen that, which you two haven't seen that. So maybe go back and watch it. But what's your overall score for the for the television broadcast,
I
Tommy
reckon
T?
we'll give it an 8. It was solid.
Yep.
Not too much rubbish.
Lots of Fernando Alonso driving around. That's
a
what
win.
brought it back
Nice.
up. Yeah.
It's
Nice.
a win.
All right, boys. Well, let's go through your drivers of the day before we go through our team by team analysis. Campy, who is your driver of the day?
Max.
Tommy T.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah,
What did he do wrong?
Well, he didn't get on the podium.
Qualifying.
Yeah, he didn't qualify very well.
He tried to qualify in 11th.
Finished behind 2 McLarens.
I think, well, my driver of the day is Danny Rick as well, because
Correctly.
that's where the heart is. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about team by team, and we can talk about
Campy's
individuals.
looking at us like, can you guys be professional and friggin' decide on a proper driver? Come on, Campy.
Let's talk about the very back of the grid for the last time this year. Haas, Kevin Magnussen in 18th, finished with some donuts, and Fittipaldi in 19th. It's just wanted to be the season wanted to be over for them, didn't they? This weekend, they did not care.
Good chance for Fittipaldi. He's got to race 2 Grand Prix. He's probably never going to race another one ever again. So we say goodbye to Mr. K-Mag. So moving on. I don't want to talk about the back of the grid. Though. It's been a long year.
It was good donuts by Kevin, though.
Yeah, it was. It was good to see. I like that.
Right in front of nobody. Poor bloke. It's so sad. Anything to add, Tommy T?
Nope.
No, good. Williams, George Russell, nowhere near where he was last weekend. 15th finishing, but at least he beat his teammate this time. Latifi 17th. Not hard to do, is it? Should we move on?
Firstly, who are we going to give last to? Because both Haas and Williams are tied on 3 points for the year. Who are we calling last?
Williams are tied on no points.
Williams are last. No, they got no
0
points, mate.
George Russell's got some points to his name, but that was for Mercedes.
For Mercedes.
We're not counting that?
No.
No, that's not Williams.
No. What are they? Well, anyway, no. But look, Williams is last. Okay,
Sorry,
because at
Williams.
least
I
K-Mag and tried to get up and get some points. Yes, well, I think they're both rubbish this year, so we're looking forward to 2022 for them. And our favourite Canadian did not much again.
Yeah.
Love this sport. Okay, Alfa Romeo, Kimi Räikkönen, finishing in 12th, ahead of Giovinazzi in 16th. Kimi had a weekend, and Giovinazzi also had a weekend, and that weekend was in Abu Dhabi at a Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Ferrari, geez, this is the
How
problem.
do we
Boring
feel
race,
about
there's hardly
Gio?
anything to talk about. Yeah, that's true.
What do we think about him? Gio?
Seb did very
Nothing?
well.
No, I don't. Gio hasn't sold me yet. But he's done all right. He's done better this year than he has last year.
He sold me with his little Nürburgring thing with Kimi in the car, going around like the proper Nordschleife. That sold me on him.
I'm open-minded to Gio.
Still not open-minded to his man bun.
I like having an Italian on the grid.
man
I think it's good for the Italian fans.
Token Italian. We need a token Russian, apparently. Is that right?
Token Aussie.
Yeah.
Token Aussie. One of each.
Yeah,
What
great.
else? At least 3 British drivers.
At least 3.
Or 10 in this instance.
The whole grid.
Let's talk about
Not
Ferrari.
sure we need Canadian drivers.
Let's talk about Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel drove with no team orders this weekend, which wouldn't have mattered anyway, although Mattia Binotto was probably remotely trying to disable his car as a final thank you. But he was holding up Charles for a long time. Charles finished in 13th, though, ahead of Seb in 14th. It was weird. Is it just me? Did you find this weird that Charles was wearing a Dunker Seb helmet?
Oh, mate. He is...
I don't get that.
You know how we talk about Lewis placating and doing a bit of like fake media stuff? Leclerc is worse.
Yeah.
He's very fake. Oh, thank you, Seb. You're such a great inspiration.
Seb
Now
was
piss
like,
off.
shut up. Now piss off.
Dunker Seb. Oh, piss off.
Yeah,
mate.
it was just weird. And he
Seriously.
did the same.
Oh.
He did the same helmet design as Seb normally does, and that confused
Take
Crofty.
your
What a
Disney
surprise!
bullcrap
Do
and rack
Ferrari
off.
do Ferrari think we can't remember what happened 6 months ago?
Yes,
Yeah.
clearly.
Oh,
Idiots.
their media department is look. I've ragged on Ferrari enough. I'll save it for another time.
Alpha
Oh, I don't think you have.
AlphaTauri, Gasly finished in 8th.
Shut up,
moving right
Tommy.
along.
And
Stop poking the
Binotto,
bear.
prick. Binotto didn't even have the spine to rock up and thank Sebastian like the rest of his team did.
Yes.
Ah, yeah.
Agree.
Cool. I feel sick. Give me a break, dude. Got the best job in the world.
Yeah. Let's talk about the more successful Italian team. AlphaTauri, Gasly finishing in 8th and Kvyat in 11th. We spoke a little bit about Kvyat. Had a good qualifying and good race for most of it. Gasly just getting him towards the end with just better time management, it looked like. I'm really excited for this car. Not as excited though as for 2021, I should say, but not as excited as the Williams photographer in the pit lane ahead of qualifying. Q2 was standing there taking a hell of a lot of photos of the AlphaTauri. Clearly, they were taking the Racing Point approach for next year's Williams.
How's Gasly's engineer? Don't worry about it, mate. We'll have a new one next year.
Yeah, I love it. And they don't have the time to do that. You're not wrong. So good. That was the other good part of the whole weekend. But Gasly's had a pretty good year. We'll do a end of season recap as well. But really, in the grand scheme of things, as I said last weekend, in terms of the Red Bull drivers who are going to escape this whole mess relatively unscathed, it's him. And unfortunate for Albon and Kvyat that they're really not, regardless if Albon stays next year, he's probably not staying around after that.
Oh, no. Boys.
Campy's.
My reapers stopped recording.
Campy's good. Well, let's, whilst you figure that out, Tommy T, Racing Point, obviously, this is the last time they're being Racing Point. Now we're going into Aston Martin after that. Stroll finishing in 10th in a car that really should have been a lot further up. To be fair to Sergio Perez, he was putting on some moves, right?
Yep.
Getting
Coming
that
from the
car
back.
towards the front. Oh,
Yep.
and, just a shame, but he did a lot of good overtakes in the first part of, in fact, when he stopped, that's when the race stops becoming interesting because at least it was good to be able to watch him come up through the back of the grid. Stroll's a dud, though, isn't he?
Oh, mate. He could not get past Sebastian Vettel in that hunk of junk of a tractor that is painted red. It was useless. I don't know what he's doing. He's in a far superior car. He should have been able to breeze past with DRS on that enormous straight. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Useless.
Campy, I mean, we probably add this into the same as the Ferrari iteration for you've ragged on enough, but Lance Stroll this weekend, you say he performs 1 in 4. This is clearly one of the other 3.
Yep. Oh, do we need to say anything more about the kid?
No, I don't think so.
Doesn't deserve a drive, not a merit. He performs once in every 4 or 5 races, and I think he's amazing. I actually listened to the podcast he did with on Beyond the Grid this week, and zero personality. I think he said the same thing about 300 times, and just interesting. It doesn't seem to be much behind the ears.
Doesn't look like he's excited to be there. That's my issue with it.
Wow. Yeah, look, I should probably be nice to him because he's going to be around for the next 10 to 15 years. So
You do you, mate.
Yep, moving on.
Look, talking about Renault, we spoke a little bit earlier about their strategy. Danny Rick finishing in 7th and Ocon in 9th. Ocon put on a great move past Stroll, it has to be said. Although we're talking about B and C class, C-class drivers here, it was very, very good. It was the only really bit of
so
racing
finished
we saw.
last week.
Oh, boy, so many subtle jabs in these ones. We're actually getting very good at disguising our criticism in well-branded sentences.
This is the professionalism that you were speaking about earlier, my friend.
Or their lack of.
What's professionalism and how do I have it? Tommy T, Ocon is going to struggle even more, I think, next year, next to Fernando Alonso. Not that I think Fernando's a better
No,
driver.
he'll struggle less. Danny Rick's better than Fernando.
Okay.
Ooh,
Wow.
Never thought I'd hear that.
That was actually, where I was going is that Campy would think the other way. But
yeah, had your hat
I'll
on
recover.
still.
If you're watching us on YouTube, this is also the first time that Tommy and I have seen Campy without a beanie on as well. And we're very, very shocked.
Yeah.
He found a beanie at 10 and it never left his head until now.
Until slightly earlier today. But Danny Rick obviously did very well out of...
Love that.
He built a gap. So not only did he pit, he built about a 14-second gap ahead of Gasly after he came out. Yes, fresh tyres and everything else, but to be able to come out of Gasly and maintain those positions just after the McLaren's was really great. Let's talk about McLaren. Lando finishing in 5th, Carlos in 6th. They tied up 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, which means big money for them. And
Slash Danny.
Exactly. Big money for Daniel Ricciardo.
Hello.
But as you said, Campy, it's their consistency. So I think these drivers have driven very well as a team. And this is a very individual sport when you're actually on the racetrack. Obviously, I know it's a team sport and there's lots of people behind it. But your teammate is really your biggest rival and your biggest comparison, your check mark, right? So these guys have worked really well together. It's great for McLaren. They've come from the time in Fernando Alonso in 2018 where they were rubbish most of the year and 17 into back in a really good contention. I'm excited for Lando to be able to learn a little bit more from Danny Rick. So I think you're right, Tommy T, in terms of, there's been a good amount of cooperation between these two, but there's only so much that Lando is going to be able to learn from Carlos, right? So Danny Rick's going to bring that A tier and hopefully drags Lando along with him to make McLaren a real contender for second place.
Yeah, and let's remember this whole year that Carlos was already going and Lando knew that. So their dynamic was always going to be different, knowing that this was the last year and there wasn't really playing for a position in the team. Lando knew he was safe. He knew Carlos was going. He knows Danny's coming in. So they don't really have that battle that you traditionally have when both drivers are vying for the top spot for next year.
Yep.
So I think that's why it was a bit more relaxed and they were happy to be teammates. But yeah, very interesting to see what happens next year when Danny moves there.
Well, look, at the end of next year, if it plays out the way I think it's going to play out for Lando Norris, he's going to come off 3 seasons of being beaten on track by his teammate. Now, that's not a good resume moving forward. He's a rookie and he's quick and he's showing signs, but he needs to take a step. I don't think the step's going to be against Daniel Ricciardo. Unfortunately, I think I think Lando will be under a lot of pressure next year. I think that magnifying glass is going to be right on him. I think it should have been on him more, particularly in the second half of this year. But you're right, probably because they haven't. His seat is shored up for next year. There wasn't. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And Mercedes, we'll talk about them next. Lewis Hamilton in third and Valtteri Bottas in second. Lewis Hamilton sort of really didn't need to come back this weekend, did he? Seemed off all weekend. He was complaining that the car was different to when he left it, obviously.
He's got a built-in excuse about why he didn't win.
Two reasons. He can say he hasn't fully recovered from COVID, and the second one is that the car was set up differently for George Russell, and they built in things. Well, they built in things between Bahrain to this time to make it more comfortable for George if George was driving. And up until really Thursday, about 10 o'clock, George was in the car. George was driving, so it was a very quick shift the other direction.
Should have just stayed home, Lewis.
Yeah, seriously.
Do you expect me to believe that a professional athlete as fit as Lewis Hamilton took longer to recover from the COVID-19 than the 74-year-old Donald J. Trump? Give me a break. What a load of shit, Lewis Hamilton. Mate, you had a week off sitting in bed hanging out with your mistress, I reckon.
We're going to have a COVID-19
Allegedly.
fact check. It's up here on our YouTube video now.
Yeah, who cares? Fuck YouTube.
But yeah, good. There it is. But he just seemed off pace all weekend.
Yeah, he did.
Valtteri, this was his time to shine. Didn't really shine all that much, did he? It looks like Mercedes. Well, it didn't look like Mercedes told us that they had turned power in the MG UK down due to reliability concerns. Is that really the reason why they were so far off Max? Or Max was just on it the entire weekend and hungry? Which we love to see a hungry Verstappen.
Just remember, Mercedes gave up on this car about 10 weeks ago.
Yeah. Red Bull are still, driving forward and everyone else is as well. And you know what? Mercedes is still going to win next year. That's how disappointing that is.
Yeah.
Do we think Mercedes...
How unlucky is Bottas again?
Yeah.
Finally beats Hamilton. And then Max pulls out a lap from nowhere.
For his first ever pole position in Formula One, according to David Coulthard.
Oh, look. I reckon we need to get Tiffany Cromwell on the podcast when we're in Melbourne next year. And I think we need to word her up off air or on air about how she needs to play a part in the downfall of Lewis Hamilton next year.
I'm sure she's going to be thrilled to be told what to do by you, Campy.
Nah, it's going to be all about giving Lewis shit on social media. About being a vegan.
Tiffany, when you hear this podcast, because of course you listen to it,
hang out with James and I.
Please email Campy has no idea probably at ozf1.com.au.
Oh, she had a crack this year. She just needed to keep doing it.
Yeah, she tested the waters, I think. Maybe they'll have a little game plan. We need to get into some preseason conversation with them ahead of testing about what to do. Okay, Red Bull, obviously very happy for Karen Horner and the team. Max in first, Albon in fourth. As we said towards the beginning of this podcast, boys, I feel like that drive was going to be the excuse that it's enough for Albon to stay in this seat.
That sucks.
He did an okay job. Didn't do a great job. He was so far off the pace, pretty much on lap 2. But he kept it in fourth. But good for Red Bull finally to have, the cars, in the top 5 where they should be every weekend, which, Karen will be happy about. But not much more to say on Red Bull. That's our final recap of the year. Thank goodness. I mean, I'm sad that it was Abu Dhabi and not something more interesting like Bahrain Outer. But boys, it's been a good year. The fact that we've had as many races as we have had in COVID is fantastic. My favourite part of going through this year has been the Fantasy League. So let's talk about that now. Fantasy. If you like, it's that
no
little,
need to put the stem in there, right, Jim?
that little sting.
That's
Can we
perfect
use yours
enough.
instead?
Phenomenal.
Fantasy.
Zeke, big shout out to you, my friend, when I said I need a sting for fantasy, and he just gave me that with no context, which was
My
great.
man.
So that's why it
It's
exists there.
better than the hot tip. The hot tip.
Campy's hot tip.
One you go. Jeez, that was...
Not only that, but you recorded hot tip, and then they edited it in.
Yeah.
So
They only had that to work with, mate.
I'm going to drop that in as well. We love the On Tom boys. They're such good mates of ours. But it's made some fantastic viewing for us, or reading for us, in terms of the best team names. We could probably go through as many team names as we can remember to crown the best fantasy league team name of 2020 when we do our recap of the entire year. But I've picked out a couple here. Abu Dhabi, sponsored by No Dose, Bring On Melbs 21, Moxley. I'm the Blad guy, Jay Moore, like that. I'm pretty sure Kimi Räikkönen loves listening to that track as well. Checo, which tyres you're putting on next time? A Block, 95 days. Yes, Munus, we know we're getting there, and we'll see you at the pub for that. World's biggest harsehole, Josh Lauder. Mate, to be honest, I think he might win the entire thing. Russell and Tussle, M. Cook, love that. Bono, I can't reach the pedals. Jay Bankston, love that, from the US. It's for me, a Ferrari. Julia Wolfendale, thank you very much for that one. Nikita Mazgropen. TLXA.
Topical.
Fantastic. There's 2 Nikitas in a row, actually. Nikita already has a bin. Jay Wallace.
Very good.
I wish. But the podium positions for this year don't go to us. It is R. Moxley first on 3,423 points. Jay Moore second in 3,402, and Timmy Bowden in 3,225. Needless to say, Tommy T, you basically DNF'd this entire thing, because the team that you didn't touch, you got 47th, and the team you were touching, 56 out of 67.
True.
Not really sure that's anything to be happy about, but I'm stoked.
Who was in that team?
I'm probably all the Haas drivers in Alfa Romeo drivers.
Horribly bad.
Yeah, it was really
I think
bad.
I had half the slots filled. I was making a move for the week after and forgot.
Bit like me 2 weeks ago. Took
Didn't
a
have enough
punt and
salary.
it failed.
And then you forgot your password.
Yeah,
That says a lot about the Oz F1 podcast, doesn't it? But Campy, you finished in 21st, and I pipped you for 16th. But thank you to
as long as Campy doesn't win.
Yeah, correct. Thank you to you guys for being part of the Oz F1 Fantasy League. We will be doing probably a bigger and better one next year, but we seriously have loved...
If I can remember my password.
Yeah, Tommy's not going to be involved. I've seriously loved reading all of your names. So thank you for the effort that you've gone to change week to week that you have done.
Very good.
Boys, this is, as I said, our final recap episode of the year.
Yes.
Bloody fantastic. Now, a big shout out to George, who gave me the idea of setting up the Discord server. We've got a stack of people over there. We've been doing the race, talking about the race on that channel and on that server. You can still go through and see in the last couple of races what we've been talking about as well. If you want to join, we've got a general forum where we can chat about what's going on for the rest of the year, and of course heading into pre-season predictions and testing at Barcelona for next year. But a massive thank you to you for listening for this year, for our race recap episodes. Thank you for watching on YouTube, doing all the wonderful things like leaving a review and subscribing and all that sort of wonderful stuff. We appreciate it. We've got some awesome stuff hopefully coming up for 2021, which we might be able to share with you soon. But Campy, Tommy T, we will see you very shortly as we do a 2020 recap podcast. But for now, it's time to end. See you, boys. We'll chat soon.
Cheers.
Lads.